So today I wanted to talk about my dream car and how I got it for mega cheap. So this may not seem like some people's dream car, but we'll dive into that in just a second here. So I like making these automotive videos. If you enjoy them, please think about liking and subscribing. And let's just do a walk around of my dream car, and then we'll talk about how much it cost me, all the work I had to do to it. I got some pictures of it. I know the side looks pretty janky here. And talk about the specs and a couple other things that's going on with this thing. So if you'll notice here, we've got some metal work here that's done. And I'm not a rich guy, so this is a couple $100 worth of sheet metal. I didn't want to get a new bumper because that was going to be expensive. This quarter panel here was about $900 at the time when I got this car. And the bumper was a couple $100 as well. So we just went ahead and riveted a bunch of sheet metal. Plus I don't have a welder, so. And then I just have a simple latch there, open that up, got the gas cap. And this has caused some problems here too, because this is supposed to be all the way over there all the time. So this has caused a couple problems with engine lights popping on when I ran the codes. So it has caused a couple issues. And initially this was gonna be just like a for fun car. So it's a little bit different how I would have done it if I knew this was gonna turn into my daily driver, and we're gonna get into that into just a second here. So we'll hop in here, we'll turn her on. It's kind of a mess from moving. So idle smoothly, 177,000 on this one, and I got it at about 162. That engine light that's on right there, that is due to the gas cap not being covered when I ran the code. So really it's got no lights generally. Oh, let's turn that off. And it's got a couple cool things on the inside here too. So it's got this, it's a police charger. It's a 2012 Dodge Charger, police charger with a 5.7 Hemi in it. And it's got this manual shift mode, which is really awesome. So you can go ahead and flick the switch here, turn it on, turn it off, and then you can just manually switch it. It's in kind of a weird spot when you're driving. You gotta like hold with the left hand and pew, pew, pew. So kind of a weird spot for that, but still really cool. I'm not used to automatic stuff. My stuff was a crank windows and really not super awesome. Also the auto lights are really nice. So it's got a lot of features that I didn't have before. It's got a menu, which is just like silly, like what? So it's got a menu, it's got tire pressure sensors. I rigged up from the whole walkie-talkie thing, I rigged up a thing to put my phone in. So I drilled something on the back there, which is kind of funny. Yeah, so it's got a center console that some guy installed, which is really neat. Let's go check out the engine. And again, I'm going to talk about how I came into this car and how I got it, how much it cost me and all that stuff just after the walk around here. We'll hop over here, we'll take a look at the engine. And I'm going to throw the specs up on this bad boy too. And what makes this thing my dream car. Let's hope I can get this. So there's the 5.7 Hemi. Runs pretty good. We had some issues with it initially, and we'll also talk about that stuff. So, well, I guess we can just talk about it now. I'll go turn it off so there's less noise though. Also push button, which is pretty neat. The gas cap button obviously doesn't work. That was all destroyed in the accident it was in. So the things we had to deal with this engine, and I knew it when I bought it, was I checked the coolant out and the coolant was completely drained. So I had to install a new radiator, which is back there, and that all went just fine. And I got it off Rock Auto for super cheap, so not trying to plug any parts, but it seems to work just fine. And the water pump was also toast. So I was pretty stinking worried about this vehicle when I bought it initially, just that the radiator was bad, the water pump was bad for sure. It had some pretty significant damage to that back corner, and I couldn't see. I was able to start the engine for a while and it didn't overheat, but this rim, which I'll also show you next here, was super duper bent. The tire was flat, and I'll show you some of that stuff too. So I wasn't able to actually drive it, and it being a police charger, I wasn't sure if everything worked correctly. So I wasn't sure if the transmission was going to work. The engine idled really nicely, it shifted nicely, it revved good, or it didn't shift nice, but it revved good. It had oil, it seemed like it was taken care of well. So it was kind of a gamble, but this wasn't meant to be my daily driver, which we'll get into here in a minute. So we'll kind of cover some other stuff here. We'll do a little bit more of the walk around. You see from this side, it looks really nice though. Look at that. So we'll dive into a little bit more on the junk charger here and how much it all cost me. So what exactly makes this thing my dream car? What are the qualifications that it had to have? So for me, I have a family, and again, this is going to be my for fun car. I have a family, and I wanted it to be four-door so I could bring them around, so check that box. I wanted it to have a lot of horsepower for cheap, which at the spec sheet here, you can see it's got 370 horsepower and a decent amount of torque, so it checked that box very nicely. It has tuned suspension because it's a police car. It's got the oversized brakes because it's a police car. It's got that manual shift mode, which is really awesome, and it has a lot more features than my truck did, honestly. So it kind of checked all the boxes for me for something that I could afford, that was really fun, and I could fix pretty easily. Now here we can just kind of look at the damage I was starting out with. So the story was a truck backed up, it hit the edge, and it just peeled it off like tinfoil. So you can see the sheet metal was just all peeled off, just like tinfoil. If you look down, you can see there's a bend in the rim and the tire is flat. So the rim was toast, the tire was flat, it's just steel rims behind covers. So the cover I was actually able to epoxy back together and save, which was pretty nice. But as you can see, a pretty decent amount of damage, and there's a decent amount of gappage from the side there and the trunk. So there's a gap there and it was cut up pretty bad. The bumper was all destroyed, so that's what we were starting with. So I kind of foolishly assumed that the car was going to come with the spare tire. I checked it over the day before. I guess I didn't pop the trunk to look and see if it had a spare tire with it. And it did not. So I tried just to send it and get it up the ramp, and it ended up skidding off due to it just being a rim on the metal there. So that was my bad, a foolish mistake. I had to jack it up, push it over, and it was just a huge nightmare because I was being a dummy. So I should have probably got a rim and a tire before I got this thing back home, but that was just a big old nightmare. Here you can see a bit of the extent of the damage too. It just was out there flapping out in the wind, so it really just peeled it off. Luckily the trunk was good. I had the parts to the bumper to zip tie that sucker back together because I didn't want to spend much money, and you can really tell the extent of the damage that it had on here. So, and it luckily didn't hit the door, so it was just strictly the quarter panel for damage wise at least, and the tire. At this point I didn't know if it drove nicely though. I wasn't sure if some suspension was damaged on the bottom. Here's just a picture of the tire here, so you can tell that truck really hit it with some gusto here. Bent it completely, destroyed the valve stem. I tried taking a pipe wrench to it to bend it when I was trying to get it on the trailer, just to get it back into place so that I could put some air in it and have it work, but that didn't work because the tire had a big hole anyway, so kind of abandoned that. But you can tell it really took a good shot, so I was pretty worried about the suspension on this thing. And here's the start to my quote-unquote repairs of the vehicle. I'm sure I'm going to catch a lot of flack for not doing it the right way, but again, I didn't have a welder. I didn't have, a quarter panel was $900. I didn't have $900 to sink into this thing, or a couple $100 for a welder for welding sheet metal and getting the proper parts, and the bumper would have been another few hundred. So, and again, this wasn't meant to be my daily driver here as well. So you can see I started riveting the sheet metal together. I was measuring out the other side to try and get it to look somewhat even, which I guess it does look kind of even. So it turned out okay, and I'll just show you a few clips of my progress here. I didn't know I was making a video on this. This was about a year ago when I did this, so it's just a couple pictures here. So another progress shot here, so I got that angle in there. I'd zip tied the bumper back together. I did buy a new blinker signal on the bottom left because that was completely destroyed, so I did actually have to buy some OEM parts here. So a little bit more progress. I have a few of the plates on top there, and then I have the angle part for the light there. So at this point here, I'd got a new tire and rim for it, so I knew that it drove fine. I'd driven it around. The suspension parts all looked like they were intact, so they looked good. So I drove it around. It drove just phenomenally. At this point, I had changed the radiator and the water pump. I didn't know the water pump was bad, but I changed the radiator. Then I saw that the water pump was also leaking, so I had to do them both, which wasn't too big a deal, but kind of annoying. Why then did this become my daily driver? And I got in my worst and only accident that I've ever been in. And it was here where I flipped my truck. I'd been T-boned, and my truck completely flipped over. It was one of the scariest days of my life. I was working a lot of nights. I had ran a red light, which it was my fault, and got hit and T-boned, and the roof was about, I'd say, 6 inches above my head here. So I just got to say for everybody, too, I don't mean to get sentimental, but if you're not sleeping right, I had a newborn, too. I was only sleeping 3-4 hours a day. If you're not sleeping, if you feel unsafe while you're driving, just be sure to get it fixed, because it's not worth losing your life over anything like that. I don't mean to get sentimental in this one, but just be careful. This was one of the scariest days of my life. I came off without a scratch on me, which was so lucky. Nobody got hurt. I was very thankful. But end of the story here, I had to get the Charger finished up, and I had to drive that instead because that was my only vehicle then at that point. So Matt, how much did this all end up costing you? So here, we'll break down the numbers. So the guy wanted $2,500 for the car, and I call it the junk charger because that's where she was heading if I didn't get it. If I didn't get this charger, it was going to the scrap heap, which would have made me sad. It had a lot of great parts on it. It was in great shape. It wasn't from the salt-filled state that I live in, so it all looked great. When I peeked underneath, it looked nice. So the car, he wanted $2,500. I paid $1,800 for it, and I got the vehicle, which was great. Sheet metal and rivets, I paid probably about $150. Paint, I probably paid $30 for. I got primer, I got colored match, and they were just rattle cans. So to add on to the jankiness of it, zip ties and other miscellaneous stuff I needed too. Water pump and radiator was probably about $150 off Rock Auto. It was pretty cheap. The rim and tire, I would say about $125. So total, it was $2,255. Just for the sake of miscellaneous parts, I'm going to go ahead and say $2,400. So if we're talking 370 horsepower, we took 2,400 divided by 370, and that's $6.50 per horsepower. I feel like you're not going to find much cheaper horsepower there. So got my dream car, basically just meaning I got a fast, fun car that I love to drive. It has way more options than that truck I crashed, and it's just awesome for, $2,400. So it is possible to get a car that you've been dreaming about your whole life. Like I saw these growing up, these Chargers, like in high school, and I just thought they were the coolest thing ever. So it is possible to get a car of your dreams for really, really cheap. Just keep your eyes peeled, save your money, and go ahead and try and do that. I don't believe in taking out tons of debt. I always put my family first, so I'm not going to spend tons of money on cars, sadly, even though I love them. So yeah, that's how much we spent on the junk charger. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I wish I kind of was doing the YouTube thing when I made it initially, but hopefully you enjoyed the story, and if you want to follow me for more content, feel free to do that as well. So you guys take care and be safe out there.